I mean, essentially we formed out of what was Shareholders United. We were United supporters who were also shareholders in the club. Obviously, after the takeover in 2005, we were forced to sell our shares, and so we reconstituted as must the Manchester United Supporters Trust. But long-term aim is to give supporters the opportunity to share in the ownership of the club, because we think that's the best model. We don't mean by that supporters will be running the club by any means. I mean, you're looking at a similar structure to what we had under a PLC, or even that we have now in terms of professionally managed. But it's about giving supporters a stake in the club and making the owners of the club have the same interest as the supporters, which is really important, I think. At the moment, we see a situation where the owners have quite different priorities from supporters. You know, do they want to reinvest the profits, or do they want to take them out? Do they want to put a lot of debt on the club? Do they want to use the funds from the club that we generate through the gates and every other mechanism in order to reinvest in the squad, to develop the stadium? Or do they want to use that for payments, interest payments on debt? So those are the sort of, you know, big issues that the Supporters Trust is interested in, is eventually changing the ownership of the club and giving every United supporter in the world actually the opportunity to take a stake in the club. I mean, I think that we wouldn't like to see a structure where the club is vulnerable to another takeover in that kind of hostile way again. You know, the PLC model wasn't perfect, but it was certainly better, I think, than than the current situation. But obviously, what we'd like is an opportunity for supporters to invest, but some kind of preventative mechanism to stop any, hostile predator coming in and taking over the club and forcing all the supporters to sell their shares. But I think we also have to understand what happened prior to 2005. I don't think people, in a way, realised how good they had it. You know, supporters didn't realise how valuable it was to have the opportunity to own shares in the club until it was gone, until it was taken away. You know, a lot of people felt that the whole situation with the Glazers stalking the club was scaremongering, and that there would never be a takeover, or if there was, it wouldn't be that bad. They wouldn't put that much debt on the club. They wouldn't increase the ticket prices by the amount that they did. And obviously we've all seen, what's happened since 2005. Of course, I mean, the team's been very successful since then still, but I think most people understand that's down to, having a great manager. I don't think you would imagine, if we'd been under the management of anybody else, that they'd have been able to achieve the success that Sir Alex has done under, under the restrictions he's operated, under the Glazers' ownership. So, we're very lucky that we had Fergie, to carry us through this period. Must is certainly not just about the Glazers. We existed a long time before the Glazers came, and, hopefully will exist in one form or another after they go as well. But, Must is what its members want it to be. Must is what United fans want it to be. Must members are just United fans. It's not, specifically just a political organisation. Obviously, we're operating in kind of political times now because, what the Glazers have done has politicised the debate. Our organisation reflects what the membership wants. So yeah, I mean, we do all sorts of things. We screen games, so you can come and watch, away games. We do that maybe at, Walkabout, for example, in town. And also, every home game we have, we have the marquee where people can meet up before the match. And if people aren't going to the game, don't have tickets, or they're a boycotter or whatever, then they can watch the game there because we put the game on a big screen in there as well. So, there's a lot of different things we do like that, social events and so on. So I think it's more than just the ownership issue, but that's at the core of the organisation, because I think that's the big challenge at the moment.
Last season, the Green and Gold campaign was particularly successful, and there's a number of fans that continue to wear the Green and Gold scarves. But inside the stadium, there hasn't been the same level of chants. Do you think that the fans have maybe got bored of it, or what do you think the reason for that is?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few different reasons. I mean, obviously, when it was a new idea, it's exciting and fresh, and people like to embrace that kind of new idea. But I think also there was a feeling that maybe it was, moving towards a climax at that time. I mean, certainly there was the feeling with the Red Knights, the potential financing of a bid coming in. Then people could see that we were going somewhere in the immediate short-term future. And obviously, there are a lot of people who will want to get involved when they think the end game is in sight. But if they think it might be a bit of a longer battle, then they kind of lose interest and put it on the back burner until things change. So I think really we're in the position now where The people who are still wearing a green and gold scarf at the game are people who recognise that, this is potentially a longer process, although, we may open the papers tomorrow and read something in terms of a supporter-friendly bid. What happened last season was, essentially the Glazers said, we're not going to sell at any kind of reasonable price. And so that put a halt, but that's, the price they were putting on it was something that nobody's prepared to pay. And so I think we're getting indications certainly that, they are interested in selling now. And, I think there's a good chance in 12 months' time that they won't be there. And so I think, it's a good opportunity for supporters to signal that they want to see a change at the club by using those colours, the green and gold colours. Very powerful symbol, actually. Not just to show that they are opposed to the way that the Glazers have owned the club, but actually also a signal to any incoming investor that supporters want to be part of the ownership structure, consulted and involved in the decisions that are made about how the club operates. Yeah, I think there are a number of different factors that are all coming together at the moment which are signalling this is the right time for the Glazers to sell. As you say, the requirement for team investment, obviously there is a requirement at some point, because we've got players that are coming towards the end of their career or that have been sold and not replaced. So certainly I can see that that's going to be a requirement. But I think also there's always the kind of inevitable, at some stage, and we hope it's a long time, but at some stage Sir Alex is going to retire, and it would be amazing if they wanted to be in place still, at that point, because that's obviously going to be a real challenge for the club. Is how do they replace Sir Alex, and that's going to require real significant investment, which I don't think they have the money really to put that investment in. And also we've seen that the demand for tickets has dropped to the extent where we aren't necessarily selling out every game anymore. Previously there was a waiting list for tickets, or at least we were told there was, for season tickets. And so it would have been a good opportunity to sell when that graph showing the growth in revenue from tickets was still going up. Ticket prices had to be frozen last season. Let's see what happens next season as well. But so I think it makes sense. Everything's pointing in the same direction. We've got a new challenge from clubs like City that are getting major investment into them, Tottenham being very successful as well. So there's even a challenge to, for the 4 teams that were competing for 4th place in the Champions League are now 6 teams. That makes things more expensive and more difficult. So everything, I think, is pointing in that same direction, that, it's a good time for them to sell. I think that the big opportunity is actually when you change the ownership of the club and you get supporters feeling positive about the club, feeling that they own a stake in the club. That's where there's real value for sponsors, being associated with a Manchester United that's where every supporter is feeling happy about the ownership of the club and really happy about the relationship with sponsors.
Tell us a little bit more about Must, because say for example, in a year's time the Glazers have gone. Where does that leave Must?
Well, it obviously depends on what structure, ownership model has taken their place. If it's the right model for us, then, I guess we might not exist at all. That would be the ideal scenario, is that, the club is taken over by people who want to invest and share ownership with supporters, and every supporter is given the opportunity to share in that ownership. In that case, we're kind of redundant as an organisation, and I think we'd all be quite happy to do that and to get on with just being supporters of the club instead of, being involved in a kind of a campaigning organisation.
It also works to keep any potential new owners or the current owners on the toes, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, but that's exactly why it's important. What precise ownership model will replace the current owners? If it's something which isn't exactly giving supporters that shared ownership, then I think there's going to be a role for an independent supporters trust or an independent supporters association like EMUSA as well. And there probably still will be a role for EMUSA in that respect anyway.
Just finally, what do you think of the side at the moment, and what do you think of realistically is going to happen between now and the end of the season?
Well, I think we all underestimate Fergie at our peril, don't we? I thought this season we would probably struggle. Looking at how dependent we were on Rooney last season, when he got injured, that's really what finished our challenge in Europe and in the Premier League. And so I was pretty pessimistic at the start of the season, and I'm amazed, really, but that's just Fergie, isn't it? He's pulled the cat out of the bag again. That we are still in the Champions League, at the top of the league, and in the FA Cup as well. It's astonishing, really, when you consider you know, that there hasn't been any real major investment in the squad since then, and you know, he still keeps producing players like Hernandez, who, you know, fantastic talent that you know, is driving the team forward. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe we've been a bit fortunate actually in that, you know, Liverpool have declined, you know, with their own ownership problems, and maybe Chelsea and you know, have underperformed this season certainly, or gone through such a horrendous patch for them that they dropped out of the challenge. So in some sense, I guess we might have had it a little bit easy, you know, and that's given us an opportunity. But you know, we're coming into the home straight now, really, aren't we? And you know, we're always strong in that position, I think. So I'm feeling pretty optimistic about our chances. Yeah.